In the dim, pre-dawn hours, the world was shrouded in a heavy blanket of silence, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a faint wind. Phantom crouched low behind the crumbling wall of a once vibrant village, now reduced to ashes and twisted metal. His breath steady, his muscles coiled like a predator preparing to strike. The cold seeped into his bones, but he welcomed the chill. It sharpened his senses, made him more alive. Every second brought him closer to the moment he had been waiting for weeks. The Russian general was here, and Phantom could feel it like an electric charge in the air. His eyes scanned the horizon, piercing the dark, as the first hints of pale light began to seep into the sky. Each movement had to be perfect. No room for error. No distraction could be allowed. Not after everything that had led him here. He thought back to the long nights spent poring over maps and intercepted communications to pinpoint the general's location. The countless hours crawling, through mud and thorny underbrush, evading patrols and traps, each sacrifice made to carve a path through enemy lines to get within range. Phantom's mind flickered with memories of comrades lost in the shadows of war, men and women who had fallen, without a name or a trace. Their faces haunted his dreams, but also fueled his determination. He was not just fighting for victory, but for every soul crushed beneath the weight of this brutal conflict. The mission was more than a target. It was a promise whispered beneath a sky full of stars. He checked his gear one last time, the sniper rifle gleaming faintly under the faint moonlight. The scope calibrated and zeroed in on the coordinates from intercepted radio chatter. The general was expected to arrive at the village any minute. The command team would assemble to discuss their next move, unaware that death waited in the wings. Phantom's fingers brushed the cold metal, and a silent vow passed through his mind to strike with surgical precision, leaving no chance for escape. The village lay silent except for the distant hum of engines and the faint crackle of radio transmissions carried on the wind. Every sound was amplified in the quiet night, and Phantom listened intently, catching the faintest footsteps crunching on gravel and the hushed murmur of voices approaching. The tension built like a tightening spring ready to unleash its force. Phantom shifted his position, moving like a shadow slipping through the remnants of broken buildings. He had learned to blend with the environment to become invisible even to the sharpest eyes. His training in stealth and patience was about to be tested as never before. The general and his command team represented the nerve center of enemy operations, and eliminating them would send shockwaves through their ranks as he positioned himself on the rooftop of a collapsed structure. Phantom took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs. His heartbeat steadied and his focus sharpened. Time slowed around him. Every detail etched into his memory. The rusted beams beneath his knees, the faint glow of dawn creeping over the horizon, and the unmistakable presence of his prey drawing near. Suddenly, the radio buzzed softly in. His earpiece, a voice crackled with urgency, informing him that the general was arriving ahead of schedule. The plan had changed, and the window of opportunity was narrowing. Phantom's eyes narrowed as he calculated his next move. There was no turning back now. The moment had come to transform from hunter to executioner below in the ruined streets. Phantom caught sight of the armored vehicles rolling cautiously into the village, their headlights piercing the gloom. The general was inside one of them, surrounded by his elite guards. The command team disembarked and made their way toward a makeshift command post, hastily set up in the shell of an old building. Every step they took brought them closer to the edge of oblivion. Phantom's finger brushed the trigger, feeling the cold hardness of the rifle, a stark contrast to the heat rushing through his veins. The sniper rifle was an extension of his will, a silent harbinger of death poised to change the course of history. With each breath, he synchronized his heartbeat with the rhythm of the world, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The general stopped briefly to consult his officers, a flicker of arrogance visible in his posture, as if he believed himself untouchable, a god among men. Phantom saw the irony, but there was no time for thoughts, only action. The scope aligned on the target, his vision narrowing to a pinpoint of fatal certainty. Just as he was about to squeeze the trigger, a sudden movement caught his eye. A shadow darted behind a pile of rubble too close for comfort. Phantom froze, the shot held in suspension, his instincts screaming danger. The enemy was aware something was wrong. But what was it? Could it be a trap or a counterattack, waiting to unfold in this darkness? The seconds stretched endlessly. Phantom's mind raced, searching for a solution. The survival of the mission depended on split-second decisions and flawless execution. Withdrawing now meant losing everything, but pressing forward could mean death. He weighed his options like a chess master predicting the opponent's next move. Then came a faint whisper over the radio, a warning of enemy reinforcements closing in faster than expected. The delicate balance of the operation was tipping toward chaos. Phantom realized this was more than just a mission. It was a fight for survival. In a world where shadows could kill and trust was a luxury he could not afford. His breath slowed his pulse. Controlled as he steadied the rifle again, the general's command team was still gathered, vulnerable in their false sense of security. The moment to act had returned stronger than ever. Phantom prepared to unleash a bullet that would echo across the battlefield, altering destinies and shattering the illusion of invincibility. But fate had one last twist in store as the ground trembled faintly beneath him, and distant echoes hinted at an approaching storm. The danger was multiplying, and Phantom's mission was about to become a deadly game of cat and mouse, where one mistake could mean the end of everything he had fought for. The Russian general stood in the heart of the ruined village, surrounded by his closest command team, a mix of hardened veterans and strategic minds whose loyalty had been earned through years of blood and fire. He spoke with an air of cold authority, his voice calm but laced with a hidden urgency that betrayed the weight of the situation. The bunker beneath them was their sanctuary, a heavily fortified stronghold, carved out of the earth meant to shield them from the chaos unfolding above. But even here the war was relentless and invisible threats lurked in every shadow. Outside the battered walls, the first light of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, casting long jagged shadows that danced like ghosts across the rubble. The general's eyes narrowed as he scanned the faces of his officers. A flicker of doubt flickered in his gaze for the first time in weeks. The intercepted messages had warned of a sniper stalking their movements, a ghost slipping through their defenses like smoke through fingers, but the general refused to show weakness instead. He barked orders sharp and unyielding, rallying his team to tighten security and prepare for an imminent strike. The command room was cramped and filled with the hum of radios and the rustling of maps spread across battered tables, each mark representing a potential battlefield or supply route. The general paced with measured steps, his mind racing through contingencies and counterattacks, calculating odds and risks. His men awaited his command, their eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resolve, knowing that failure was not an option. Suddenly, a distant crack shattered the tense atmosphere, a bullet striking the outer wall, sending a shower of dust and debris into the air. The room froze for a heartbeat before the general's voice cut through the panic. Hold positions, identify the shooter, and prepare to retaliate. He moved swiftly toward the reinforced window, peering through the narrow slit, trying to catch a glimpse of the elusive threat that had dared to challenge their fortress. Outside the perimeter, soldiers scrambled into defensive positions, their weapons trained on the surrounding ruins, searching for the invisible enemy who had turned their world upside down. The sniper was a phantom, an unseen terror haunting their every move, sowing fear with each silent shot. The general knew that if they did not find and eliminate this ghost quickly, their command structure would collapse, and with it, their chances of holding the line. In the shadows just beyond the bunker, Phantom observed the chaos unfolding below his breath, steady and his body tense like a coiled spring ready to strike again. He moved silently through the rubble, avoiding patrols and traps with the skill of a ghost, his presence marked only by the faintest ripple in the still air. His mission was clear: eliminate the general and shatter the command team, leaving the enemy leaderless and vulnerable. But the risks were greater than ever. The radio buzzed with urgent reports of incoming enemy reinforcements. A specialized squad trained in counter-sniper tactics was closing in fast. Their reputation for ruthless efficiency was well known, and Phantom knew that once they arrived, his window for escape would narrow to nearly impossible. The hunt had become two-sided, and the stakes were higher than ever. Phantom adjusted his position using the crumbled remains of a burnt-out vehicle for cover. His fingers danced over the rifle, checking the scope, recalibrating for distance and wind speed. Every detail mattered. Every variable could mean the difference between life and death. He was not just a marksman, but a strategist, weaving through a deadly puzzle with no room for error, back in the bunker. The general's officers debated fiercely over their next move, the tension palpable as mistrust began to seep into their ranks. Some argued for a swift offensive strike. Others pleaded for caution, fearing the sniper was a diversion masking a larger attack. The general silenced the bickering with a cold glance, reminding them that unity was their only shield against the encroaching darkness. The distant sound of engines echoed through the valley, a chilling reminder that time was running out. The specialized squad was approaching faster than anticipated, and the general's fortress was now a trap waiting to be sprung. Phantom felt the weight of the moment, knowing that his success depended not only on his shot, but on his ability to vanish before the enemy could close the noose. Suddenly, a sharp crack cut through the air again, but this time closer and more deliberate. A bullet struck the ground inches from a soldier's boot, sending shards of stone flying. The command team scrambled for cover, realizing they were under direct assault. The general cursed under his breath, knowing that the sniper was playing a deadly game of cat and mouse, taunting them with every shot. Phantom watched from his vantage point, a shadow among shadows, waiting for the perfect opening. His pulse quickened as the general moved into an exposed position, gesturing to his officers, unaware that death was already aiming at him. The scope focused, narrowing until the general's face filled the crosshairs, every second dragging the moment closer to the inevitable. But just as Phantom was about to pull the trigger, a sudden explosion rocked the bunker, throwing dust and debris into the air. The ground trembled beneath him, and the sound of distant gunfire erupted into a cacophony of chaos. The specialized squad had arrived, and the trap had been sprung. The delicate balance between hunter and hunted shattered in an instant. Phantom knew the mission was no longer just about the kill, but about survival. The battlefield had shifted into a deadly labyrinth where every shadow could hide a threat and every step could lead to death. He melted into the ruins, disappearing from sight as enemy soldiers poured into the village, searching for the ghost sniper back. Inside the bunker, the general barked orders to rally his men amidst the smoke and rubble, their command team fractured but still fighting. The sound of boots pounding and rifles cracking filled the air as the front line of a brutal battle was drawn. The general's grip tightened on his weapon, a mix of fury and desperation, fueling his resolve to hold the line, no matter the cost. Outside, Phantom moved with calculated grace, weaving through the battlefield, using every scrap of cover and every hidden path to evade the relentless pursuers. The mission was far from over, and the final act of this deadly play was yet to unfold. The hunter had become the hunted, and the night held secrets darker than ever before. Phantom moved silently, like a shadow slipping through the ruined village, the once bustling streets now a labyrinth of rubble and despair. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and gunpowder mingling with the cold morning mist. His heart pounded, but his breathing remained steady, every step calculated to avoid detection. The elite enemy squad was closing in faster than he had anticipated, a ruthless force trained specifically to hunt and eliminate snipers like him. His mind raced, assessing escape routes, weaving through memories of the terrain from reconnaissance missions and fleeting glimpses during the long nights of surveillance. He darted behind a shattered wall, crouched low under the skeletal remains of a burnt-out truck, and moved swiftly from cover. To cover, his senses heightened to the point of razor sharpness. Every cracked twig or distant shout could betray his position and mean the difference between life and death. The specialized squad moved with ruthless precision, sweeping the village, methodically, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets like the relentless beat of a death march. Phantom knew they were closing the net, a deadly noose tightening with every passing second. Their voices crackled over encrypted radios, communicating coordinates and tactical data with cold efficiency. Their mission was clear: hunt down the sniper, who had already shattered their command structure, and prevent any further strikes. Phantom's thoughts flickered to the general. His target, the man whose elimination had become a symbol of hope and vengeance in the war-torn region. The bullet that had found its mark in the dead of night had sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks, fracturing their leadership and igniting chaos. But now Phantom was a marked man, a phantom ghost with a price on his head, pursued by the fiercest hunters the battlefield had to offer. He paused briefly on the edge of a collapsed building overlooking the main square, the center of the village where the bunker had stood now a smoldering ruin. Soldiers from both sides lay scattered in broken silence, the scars of battle etched into every surface. The village was no longer a place of life, but a graveyard for dreams and ambitions crushed beneath the weight of war. Phantom adjusted his grip on the rifle, feeling the cold metal steadying his resolve. Despite the danger and exhaustion, he refused to yield. His mission was far from over, and retreat was not an option. He had to find a way out, a path that would lead him to safety and the intelligence he carried that could turn the tide of the war forever. Suddenly, a noise to his left, a sharp crack, and a silhouette darting through the smoke. Phantom reacted instantly, diving behind a concrete pillar as bullets tore through the air around him. The enemy squad had spotted him and opened fire. Their precision was deadly, but Phantom's training kept him one step ahead, weaving through the chaos like a wraith slipping through grasping hands. He fired back only. Once his bullet finding a target in the arm of an advancing soldier, the man screamed and fell back, buying Phantom precious seconds to slip deeper into the maze of ruins. The hunt was intensifying, and every move could spell his doom. But Phantom's mind was a steel trap, adapting and evolving with the relentless pace of the pursuit. As he moved, Phantom's thoughts returned to the radio chatter intercepted before the strike. The enemy commanders were desperate to regroup and retaliate, furious at the loss of their leader and the disruption caused by the sniper's lethal precision. Their morale was shaken but not broken, and they would stop at nothing to crush this threat once and for all. Phantom knew he had to stay ahead of them, using every trick in the book: stealth, distraction, and misdirection. His eyes scanned the shadows, looking for signs of ambush and safe passages. A sudden glint of metal caught his attention, and he realized a trap had been laid, a snare hidden beneath the debris, ready to ensnare the unwary. With a burst of speed, he vaulted over the danger, landing hard but unharmed on the other side. The chase was becoming a battle of wills, a test of endurance and cunning, in a landscape where every stone and shadow could be a weapon. His training was the only thing keeping him alive, and the faint hope of victory driving him forward. The village stretched out ahead, a ruined maze of narrow alleys and collapsed buildings. Phantom knew he had to reach the outskirts, where friendly forces might offer refuge, but the enemy was closing the distance and the terrain offered few advantages. The sounds of pursuit grew louder, voices shouting orders, footsteps pounding, and the unmistakable clatter of heavy weapons being readied. Suddenly, Phantom spotted a narrow drainage tunnel partially obscured by rubble. The entrance was barely large enough for a man to squeeze through, but it offered a chance to disappear beneath the chaos and gain a critical edge. The decision was split second, with no margin for hesitation. He dove toward the opening, his body scraping against the jagged edges as bullets kicked up dust behind him. Inside the tunnel, the darkness was suffocating, a cold, damp maze twisting beneath the village. Like the belly of some ancient beast, it echoed with the distant sounds of battle above. Phantom moved cautiously, relying on touch and memory to navigate the winding passages, his rifle clutched tightly and every muscle coiled, ready for sudden violence. The pursuit slowed above ground as the enemy searched for the vanished sniper, but Phantom had gained precious minutes. The tunnel system was a lifeline, a fragile thread leading away from the trap that had been set. He pushed forward, driven by exhaustion, adrenaline, and the weight of the mission burning deep in his chest. But the darkness was deceptive, and the tunnel was a trap of another kind. A sudden collapse sent a shower of dust and debris falling in front of him, blocking the path and trapping him inside. Panic clawed at his mind, but he forced it down, breathing deeply and focusing on survival. The enemy might think him dead, but Phantom knew better. The fight was far from over. Outside the village, the first light of day was breaking, casting a pale glow on the blood-stained ruins. The war had left scars that would never heal, and every victory came at a brutal price. Phantom's story was one of countless untold heroes caught in the relentless storm of conflict where shadows hid dangers, and courage was tested beyond limits as he pressed against the debris, trapped but not defeated. Phantom's mind raced, plotting his next move. The silence around him was heavy, but beneath the surface, the pulse of the battlefield still beat strong. The mission was no longer just about a single shot, but about survival, the will to endure, and the hope that even in the darkest moments light could be found. The tunnel was cold and dark, the walls slick with moisture, and the air thick with dust. Phantom pressed his back against the rough stone, trying to steady his breathing. His fingers brushed over the debris blocking the narrow passage, the weight of the rubble daunting but not insurmountable. Every second above ground meant enemy forces, closing in, tightening the noose around the shattered village and him. He could hear distant shouts and the echo of boots pounding the cracked pavement above. The elite squad had not given up their hunt, and now they scoured every corner searching for the ghost that had slipped through their grasp. Their voices were sharp and demanding urgent orders, barking through radios while flashlights pierced the darkness below the ruined buildings. Phantom knew he had to act fast. The blocked tunnel was a dead end, but giving up was not an option. Survival was etched into his bones, and the mission was far from complete. With measured strength, he began to shift pieces of concrete and broken wood away, the task exhausting but necessary. The cold seeped deeper into his skin as he worked, silent and focused. Every scrape of stone against stone was a risk, but Phantom balanced patience and urgency expertly. The enemy was near, and any noise could betray his position, but his training drilled into him the art of moving like a shadow, unseen, unheard. The wall shifted slightly, revealing a narrow gap just enough for a slim body to slip through. With a grunt, he wriggled through the opening, the tight space scraping against his gear and skin, but freedom lay just beyond. The tunnel twisted ahead, descending into deeper darkness. Phantom could hear the faint drip of water echoing through the labyrinth. His pulse was steady, but adrenaline kept his senses alert for any sign of danger as he emerged. Into a wider chamber, the walls glistened with damp condensation, and the faint glow of distant lights filtered through cracks above. The underground network was more extensive than he had imagined, a hidden artery beneath the battlefield. It's forgotten. Paths might offer a route to safety or a trap laid by enemies aware of its existence. Phantom moved cautiously, trusting his instincts more than the sparse map etched in his mind. The air grew colder and the silence heavier with each step. The mission was no longer about the shot, but about navigating this maze alive. A wrong turn could lead him straight into enemy hands or deeper into the darkness from which escape seemed impossible. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps reached his ears, soft and irregular like a patrol moving cautiously through the tunnels. Their voices were muffled but unmistakable. Phantom ducked behind a pillar, letting the shadows swallow him whole. The enemy was close again, but they were unfamiliar with this terrain. Moving with hesitation and confusion, his chance to slip past unnoticed was fleeting. He held his breath as the patrol passed inches from his hiding spot. The flicker of their flashlights barely touched the darkness where he lay. Stillness was his ally and patience his weapon. As soon as they vanished, Phantom slipped forward, his footsteps barely a whisper on the damp stone floor. The deeper tunnels opened into a narrow passage lined with rusted pipes and scattered debris. A faint breeze whispered through the cracks, hinting at an exit somewhere beyond. The thought of sunlight and open air fueled his weary body, pushing him onward, despite the creeping exhaustion threatening to claim him. But just as hope began to kindle, Phantom's senses screamed a warning. The sound of a distant radio burst, a code cracked, and a voice speaking in hurried Russian reached his ears. He froze, hidden in the shadows, realizing that enemy reinforcements were not far behind. A new wave of hunters was closing in, intent on flushing him out completely. The game had changed again, and the balance of power shifted toward his pursuers. But Phantom was no stranger to adversity. His mind raced, calculating escape routes, alternative paths, and possible traps. He could feel the weight of the mission pressing down, yet within him burned the unyielding fire of resolve. His fingers tightened around the rifle, the cold metal grounding him in the storm of uncertainty. Ahead lay a fork in the tunnel, the left path descending. steeply into darkness, the right winding upward toward a faint glow. Phantom hesitated only for a heartbeat before choosing the path that led upward toward the promise of light and perhaps salvation. The climb was treacherous, slippery with moss and littered with broken stones. Each movement had to be precise every step, a gamble against injury or discovery. As he ascended, the faint glow grew stronger, a welcome beacon in the subterranean labyrinth. His heart quickened with the possibility of escape, but caution remained paramount. Finally, he emerged into a narrow ventilation shaft, its grate rusted and loose. Phantom worked quickly, prying it free enough to slip through the small opening. The cold morning air hit him like a shock washing, away the dampness and stale scent of the tunnels. The world above was waking to a new day, but the danger had not diminished. He was exposed now, a target in the open, and the sound of distant gunfire reminded him that the battle raged on the generals. Death had sparked chaos, but also a brutal response from enemy forces determined to regain control. The sniper's mission was accomplished, but survival was the final test. Phantom glanced around, spotting the ruins of an abandoned farmhouse, a possible refuge or a trap concealed by the skeletal remains of trees and shattered walls. It offered cover and a chance to regroup. His body ached, but the fire within would not be extinguished. He moved with cautious urgency, knowing that every moment counted. He slipped into the shadows of the farmhouse. A crackling voice erupted from his radio, a frantic message from his command, urging extraction and providing coordinates for a rendezvous point. The war was far from over, but there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to turn the tide with the intelligence he carried. But just as he began to radio back, a sharp crack echoed from the tree line. A bullet whizzed past his ear and the chase was reignited. The enemy had tracked him down to the outskirts, and the final confrontation was inevitable. Phantom's eyes narrowed. Steel met fire as he prepared for the fight that would decide not only his fate, but the fate of countless others caught in the merciless grip of war. Phantom's pulse thundered in, his ears as he sprinted through the shattered remains of the farmhouse, his every instinct screaming for survival. The enemy was relentless, their footsteps pounding the earth behind him like the approach of a storm. Bullets kicked up dirt and splinters, narrowly missing him as he dove behind a crumbling wall, catching his breath and scanning for a way out. The once silent village was now a battlefield alive with chaos and fury. The clash between hunter and hunted reached its fevered peak with no room for mercy or mistake. Phantom knew this was more than a fight for his life. It was a battle for the soul of a nation. The intelligence he carried was a beacon of hope, a weapon sharper than any rifle, and losing it meant losing everything. He moved. With calculated urgency, weaving through the debris and shattered trees, the weight of exhaustion pressing heavy, but his resolve unbreakable. The enemy squad closed in tighter, their shouts mixing with the harsh rattle of gunfire drawing nearer, each heartbeat counting down the seconds until capture or death. Suddenly, Phantom spotted the faint glimmer of a river beyond the tree line, a thin ribbon of hope flowing beneath the blood-red sky. The water promised escape, freedom, and a chance to deliver the critical intelligence to waiting allies. But reaching it meant crossing open ground exposed and vulnerable to enemy fire. Without hesitation, Phantom bolted toward the riverbank, dodging bullets and leaping over fallen branches, his breath ragged, but determination fueling his every step. The enemy raised their weapons, firing wildly, desperate to stop the ghost slipping through their grasp. The chase was a deadly dance, with death closing in from all sides. As he reached the water's edge, Phantom plunged into the cold current, letting the river carry him downstream, its icy grip numbing his pain and sharpening his senses. The enemy hesitated momentarily at the bank, their shouts drowned by the rushing water and the distance growing between them.